You will not believe what just happened in the ongoing saga involving Blake Lively, because after weeks of silence, court filings, and public speculation, something absolutely unexpected has just come to light in a stunning move that no one predicted. Blake Lively appears to have completely backed away from the legal push that was already drawing serious criticism from digital creators. Legal experts and even some public figures, what started as a strategy wrapped in legal terms and formal language, now looks like a retreat, a quiet reversal with major implications for everyone involved. And if that was not enough, the timing could not be more dramatic, because just as news spread about this withdrawal, a major update dropped in the parallel trial involving Candace Owens. A development that has left both supporters and critics reeling and wondering what comes next for the entire interconnected web of lawsuits that has pulled in influencers, celebrities, and now media figures as well. There is a strange silence hanging in the air, but it is the kind of silence that says more than any press conference ever could, because while the official documents are dry and careful, those who have followed the subpoenas from day one are already connecting the dots and asking hard questions. What caused the sudden shift? Who advised this? And what happens now to the creators who were previously caught in the crosshairs as of this moment? We are not seeing the aggressive posture that dominated the earlier phase of this drama. In fact, the legal tone has shifted dramatically, and the absence of follow-through on what were once high-stakes subpoenas suggests that something behind the scenes may have changed, whether it was strategic, legal, counsel shifting, public pressure, or a recalibration after internal fallout. One thing is clear: Blake Lively's camp is no longer pursuing the subpoenas with the energy and visibility that defined the early stages of this dispute. And just as viewers and legal analysts started to digest this update, Candace Owens made her next courtroom appearance in a separate but equally explosive legal matter, one that many believe is indirectly connected due to the overlapping themes of public reputation, media commentary, and online expression. This latest courtroom revelation not only adds a new chapter to the Owens proceedings, but also casts a long shadow over the entire conversation about fairness, influence, and freedom of expression in an era where celebrities and digital voices often collide with very real legal consequences. Today, we are diving deep into both of these stories. Why Blake Lively's team may have chosen to quietly walk away from their controversial legal demands, what it says about the strength of their case, and what the next moves might be from the other side, plus the exact details unfolding in the Candace Owens trial, including courtroom statements, witness reactions, and what legal experts are now predicting. Based on everything we know so far, buckle in, because what comes next could reshape the narrative completely. And we are just getting started. At first, it seemed like a straightforward display of legal confidence, a bold declaration from Blake Lively's legal team that they were ready to use every tool available to defend their client and control the narrative that had quickly spiraled out of their hands. The subpoenas were issued like thunderclaps, sudden, loud, and impossible to ignore. Creators online were stunned, some blindsided completely, others confused by the sweeping nature of the legal requests. But behind all the noise, there was one lingering question: would these subpoenas actually hold? Would they withstand legal scrutiny? And, most importantly, would they achieve what Blake Lively's camp was trying so desperately to pull off? And now, just weeks later, the answer to that question seems to be arriving in a slow but unmistakable reversal as documents trickle out through court updates and lawyers quietly recalibrate their positions. The once roaring storm of subpoenas has all but fizzled out, replaced by what insiders are calling a quiet step back and a noticeable absence of pressure. In fact, several creators who were previously targeted have now confirmed that no further legal communication has followed. No in-person deposition demands, no court appearance pressure. Just silence. An eerie silence that only reinforces the idea that the subpoenas were either a miscalculation or a tactic that didn't pan out as expected. And perhaps even more telling is the legal language that's now being used by Blake Lively's own attorneys. Words like reconsideration, voluntary withdrawal, procedural reevaluation, all carefully phrased to avoid public embarrassment, but the subtext is loud and clear. There is a quiet retreat happening here, one that insiders say began the moment media scrutiny intensified, and questions about the real motivation behind these subpoenas started gaining traction. The timing is just too specific to ignore. Almost immediately after major online legal analysts began dissecting the weaknesses of the subpoenas and speculating about overreach and improper usage of legal tools. The energy around Blake Lively's legal moves started to change, and quietly so did the posture of her team. This was no longer about aggressively pursuing justice or making an example of digital voices. It became about containment, about minimizing the damage, and avoiding a backlash that was already spreading through both entertainment and creator communities. The dramatic shift is also affecting how other high-profile figures are handling similar disputes, and this brings us directly to the courtroom. Developments involving Candace Owens, a case that is separate in legal terms but heavily connected in theme, because at the heart of both of these legal sagas lies a central question: who gets to control public perception when online creators say something controversial or critical about a celebrity? Where's the line between opinion and defamation? And who has the right to respond with legal force? In the latest courtroom session involving Candace Owens, new testimony was introduced that directly addressed this tension. A media consultant brought in as an expert witness described a growing trend among public figures to use legal pressure as a way to discourage online commentary, even if that commentary falls within fair use or journalistic standards. The witness was not directly referencing Blake Lively, but the timing and context made the implications clear. We are now in an era where legal maneuvering is being tested against freedom of expression in real time, and the courtroom is where that tension is unfolding in full view. In the Owens trial, the mood has been tense. The judge has made several pointed remarks about the importance of distinguishing between actual harm and perceived offense, reminding both legal teams that the court is not a forum for silencing criticism, but a place for factual resolution. This tone matters because it reflects a broader judicial sentiment, one that does not automatically side with celebrity plaintiffs simply because of their fame. And if this sentiment holds, then it has direct consequences for anyone, including Blake Lively, who hopes to use legal power to reshape a narrative that has already taken on a life of its own. Sources close to the Owens proceedings say that the defense is preparing a detailed argument that draws a clear line between commentary and malicious intent, an argument that legal observers believe may also influence future decisions in related public figure cases. Meanwhile, creators online are responding with a mix of relief and caution. Some see Blake Lively's apparent retreat as a win for free speech. Others are warning that the fight is far from over, especially given how quietly this reversal is unfolding. But what no one can deny is the shift in momentum. Blake Lively's team once seemed eager to pursue legal confrontation. Now they appear focused on avoidance and silence. And as we move deeper into both of these legal storylines, one thing becomes clear. This is not just about one actress or one commentator. It's about a changing power dynamic between those who command the spotlight and those who speak about them, and the courts are quickly becoming the arena where these new battles are being fought, not in front of cameras but in transcripts and testimony. And for now, that arena is revealing more than any celebrity press release ever could. The silence from Blake Lively's legal team was deafening, but it wasn't the kind of silence that comes from confidence or a calm resolution. It was the kind that carries weight, that makes people look twice, that forces legal analysts to scan court dockets every morning, hoping to find a clue, a filing, a motion, anything that signals the next move. And yet, day after day, that next move never came, because behind the scenes, a completely different reality was taking shape, one that contradicted the public persona of control and precision that Lively's team had worked so hard to cultivate. Insiders now say that almost immediately after issuing those aggressive subpoenas, the team was overwhelmed with resistance, not just from the creators themselves, but from their legal representatives, many of whom responded with sharp counters pointing to constitutional protections, jurisdictional overreach, and the chilling effect such subpoenas could have on journalism and public commentary. And those responses weren't just bluster, they were effective. They sparked internal panic. And according to someone familiar with the matter, they forced a top-level meeting within Blake Lively's legal circle, where the tone shifted dramatically from assertive to cautious. From push to pull, what started as a campaign of intimidation quickly transformed into a crisis management Effort and that pivot is what we're seeing now in real time as the subpoenas evaporate from the record without explanation. No courtroom drama, no public showdown, just a disappearing act orchestrated by attorneys who realized that continuing down this path might actually make things worse, not better. And while all this was playing out, the Candace Owens courtroom drama was becoming the unintentional mirror to this strategy, the place where similar questions were being asked and actual judicial opinions were being recorded in one particularly tense exchange. The judge pressed Owens' legal team on the idea of weaponizing litigation. The question was blunt: does filing lawsuits in response to public criticism amount to an abuse of legal process? The defense pounced on the question, citing multiple public figure cases where courts ultimately ruled in favor of content creators, even when the language used was harsh or inflammatory, because what mattered most was intent and context, to things notoriously difficult to prove in defamation cases, especially when the plaintiff is a celebrity used to public attention. The subtext of this moment wasn't lost on legal commentators, many of whom began drawing parallels between the Owens case and the now ghosted Lively subpoenas. What if the real reason for the sudden retreat was that Blake Lively's legal team saw the writing on the wall, a judiciary no longer willing to blindly side with the rich and famous, a legal culture shifting slowly toward protecting open dialogue rather than punishing it in response to these developments? Online discourse exploded again, with creators rallying behind one another, not just in support but in strategic defense, sharing templates for legal responses and connecting with pro bono attorneys who recognize the broader implications of the fight. And even more surprisingly, a few entertainment lawyers began speaking anonymously to the press, confirming that the move to drop the subpoenas was almost certainly based on an internal cost-benefit analysis, not in terms of dollars but in reputation and precedent. The fear wasn't just that they would lose in court, it was that they would look like bullies in a world increasingly allergic to that kind of behavior, and that is exactly what has been unfolding. The longer Blake Lively's camp stays silent, the more the narrative slips from their control, the more their attempt at secrecy and legal intimidation reads like guilt or weakness, or worse, a failed PR stunt dressed up in legalese. And all the while, the Owens trial pushes forward with real consequences hanging in the balance and real people testifying under oath. One witness, a digital rights expert, made a point that landed like a thunderclap the moment a celebrity uses their resources to target commentary they dislike. They're not just defending themselves. They're signaling to every creator watching that they too are vulnerable. And if the courts do not push back, if the judiciary does not stand up to that signal, then we will enter a phase of selective silence where only the loudest, most powerful voices get to shape public perception. The courtroom went quiet after that. Not because people disagreed, but because the implications were enormous. And again, even though Blake Lively was not on trial, her name kept surfacing in hushed conversations in sidebars and in whispered commentary in the hallways of the courthouse, as if the entire legal community knew that these cases were connected by more than just timing. They were part of the same cultural reckoning, one that was dragging celebrities, legal teams, and content creators into the same chaotic arena and forcing everyone to choose a side. And while Candace Owens continues to show up to court, argue her case, and face the consequences, Blake Lively's decision to pull back and stay quiet is being interpreted in a very different light, as weakness, as avoidance, as a retreat from accountability. And that perception is only growing, especially as more content creators who were once targeted by the subpoenas begin to speak publicly about the emotional and financial toll of being unexpectedly dragged into a legal mess they never signed up for. One creator described sleepless nights wondering if she'd need to hire a lawyer. Another said he considered deleting his entire channel out of fear. And now that the subpoenas have quietly vanished, those creators are not just relieved, they're angry, and some are already planning to file complaints against Lively's legal team for what they call abuse of process, because, as one attorney put it, issuing subpoenas you can't legally enforce is not just reckless, it's arguably unethical. And that word unethical is beginning to cling to this case like smoke, not just around the lawyers involved, but around Blake Lively herself. And with each passing day of silence, with each subpoena that quietly disappears without explanation, the cloud thickens, and no amount of polished PR statements or vague legalese can make it go away anymore. Blake Lively, once known for her grace and composure in the public eye, now found herself at the center of a storm that no amount of styling or strategic silence could tame. Her team initially brushed off the noise surrounding the sham subpoenas, claiming the actress was simply protecting her image and avoiding media spectacle. But behind the scenes, documents began circulating, ones that cast serious doubts on the intention behind those legal maneuvers. And while Blake's legal team maintained that these subpoenas were legitimate efforts tied to pending litigation, independent analysts and observers started painting a different picture, a coordinated effort possibly meant to pressure online voices into silence was now unraveling as creators began speaking out, revealing eerie similarities in the language, tone, and demands of the subpoenas. They received. The idea that this was just routine legal protocol was quickly losing traction. Instead, a clearer, more concerning narrative began forming, one that involved calculated legal pressure without the backing of a substantial case. And as these events played out, another figure was slowly stepping into the light. Candace Owens, whose own legal battle had been mostly running in parallel, was now becoming entangled in the same timeline, though not directly linked to Blake. Lively, her situation began to offer eerie parallels. Both involved public figures who had initiated legal action that critics argued was less about justice and more about optics. Candace's trial update revealed that several documents had been unsealed, revealing exchanges that showed concerns within her own team about the backlash they might face, the legal risks, the media coverage, and how public opinion might swing against them. The parallels between both stories began echoing louder each week as fans, observers, and media outlets compared strategies, statements, and courtroom developments. While Blake's team worked to shift the narrative, Candace was quietly reworking her public image, steering away from strong rhetoric and instead emphasizing dignity and process. But back in Blake's corner, the pressure was different. Her withdrawal from the subpoenas sparked a flurry of reactions. Across digital platforms, creators who had previously stayed silent started sharing timelines, screenshots, and their own legal interactions, saying this was never about real litigation. It was about intimidation. Now, with the sham subpoenas effectively dropped, the question emerged: what now? Would there be any accountability, or would silence simply be the conclusion? Blake's team remained tight-lipped, but the community that had been affected was no longer in the mood for silence, and instead demanded transparency. This pressure, combined with rising mainstream media coverage, created a snowball effect. Suddenly, legal experts, former publicists, and digital rights advocates weighed in, some suggesting that this case might influence how online legal threats are treated in the future, especially when directed at content creators. Meanwhile, the emotional tone online shifted from fear to focus. Creators banded together, comparing notes, forming support networks, and encouraging each other to continue posting their content unapologetically. Some even framed this moment as a digital turning point, saying the era of using legalese to silence commentary might be coming to an end. Yet the road ahead for Blake wasn't yet fully determined. Her reputation, while not destroyed, had undeniably shifted, and many in Hollywood reportedly began reconsidering their associations, particularly with high-stakes promotional campaigns where controversy could jeopardize brand deals. Whispers in industry circles pointed to advertisers quietly pulling back or choosing safer faces for endorsements. While these reports were never confirmed, they fed into a growing sense that this controversy was no longer limited to just creators or fans. It had reached boardrooms, decision-makers, and contracts. As for Candace Owens, her legal update brought both clarity and curiosity. The court allowed a crucial motion that gave her team more discovery rights, raising speculation that further revelations might emerge. And though her team was cautious about public statements, some commentators noted that her approach had become more measured, possibly learning from the missteps visible in the Blake Lively situation. Both women now stood at different but interconnected crossroads. One seemed to be retreating while the other recalibrated, each facing public judgment in real time, not from a jury, but from the people watching, reading, and analyzing every step with digital magnifying glasses. The sense of unpredictability loomed large. No one knew what document might be leaked next, what creator might break silence next, or what courtroom twist might change everything again. What was clear, however, was that silence was no longer safe, and that both women had lost some control of the narrative, which now belonged to the public. As the digital Waves kept swelling and creators refused to back down. The Blake Lively story took yet another turn, a silent one, but heavy. The kind of turn where absence speaks louder than any official statement. Blake's withdrawal from and so the silence became the story. What began as a power move turned into a cautionary tale, and the internet that once merely watched now documented, dissected, and refused to look away. Blake Lively's sudden retreat from the sham subpoenas didn't erase the questions, it multiplied them. Candace Owens' fading aggression in court didn't restore her credibility, it cracked it, and while both may have hoped that silence would soften the blow, it only made the impact more deafening. Creators rose from intimidation to investigation. Viewers turned into analysts, and a community that once feared legal threats found its voice in unity. Now the truth isn't in courtrooms or press releases, it's archived in thumbnails, tweets, live streams, and timelines. This wasn't just the collapse of a smear campaign, this was the rise of a resistance where influence didn't buy immunity, where clout couldn't cancel criticism, and where silence no longer protected the powerful from the consequences of their own games. The world is watching, and this time it's not waiting for Hollywood to write the ending. It's already been written by the very voices they tried to erase, and those voices aren't done yet, not even close.